Hi, everybody. Angel here. And I want to say thanks so much for joining. And I'm super happy to be speaking with Hillary today from Let Nature Nurture. And we will start very soon. So if you're watching live or on the replay, thanks so much.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Fine, thanks. Thanks so much for taking the time.
So excited. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Now I am playing with filters, so you're going to see lots of avocados.
Love that. Those are so, they're coming from your eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did pin our topics on the bottom just to kind of help to kind of follow along. And I do want to thank you again for taking the time. I know everybody's busy. And as folks come in, I'll just kind of pause and say hi and see if they have any questions, and then we can just continue.
Amazing. Thanks.
Awesome.
And I love
So
your page. I love that you have all these different, people with such different backgrounds and perspectives. It's incredible. It gives everybody something.
I agree. Totally, totally. I think everyone has a special story and a special approach, and everybody is like inspiring and helping in their own way. And I see you're staying hydrated, so
They
you're
have,
doing you're doing great.
so I'm in Wyoming and it's
Oh,
right here.
yeah.
Woke up this morning. It was maybe 9 degrees, but it's a lot of snow and cold,
Oh.
dry. So got to drink the water.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Wyoming is on my list because I love nature. Now, I'm not telling you that I'm like, a hiker or anything like that. No, 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 no. But I've seen so much footage and so many photos of Wyoming that I just super want to get up there because it just seems so beautiful, so peaceful too.
So peaceful, and it's very zen. I mean, I moved from New York, but
Ay, ay, ay.
yeah, it's night and day. I was in Upper West Side of Manhattan, but
Oh la la.
yeah, but this is great.
Yeah, totally. So I know we have a quite a few topics to cover, so I think we should just get started and we'll kind of, say hi to people as they come in. And so, Hillary, the first question I want to ask you is if you could please share with us your whole food plant-based journey,
Okay.
how you started and how you ended up to where you are today.
Amazing. It's a bit of a loaded question, Angel, because I'll start by saying that I am a recovered junk food junkie and a stress addict. Yeah, not great things, but sugar and stress were my drugs.
Yeah.
And about 2 years ago, it totally caught up with me. I was on a trip with my daughter, actually. But prior to that, I was in a really big job. I was on Wall Street. I was an executive on Wall Street. I had two parents that were diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I had, within 6 months of each other, my son was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and he had had a lot of medical issues growing up. And just as an aside, my first husband passed away from complications of Crohn's, so it was like, yikes. And so there was a lot of stress going on in my life, and I was just plowing through it as so many of us try to do. And I was eating, bags and bags, and I kid you not, Angel, when I tell you, between 4 and 6 full packs of Reese's peanut butter cups a day, 2 packs of chips, and then maybe a salad at dinner or something like that. And I was just doing, I was getting through. And then I was on a vacation with my daughter. I wasn't feeling great for quite some time, but all the tests were fine, whatever that meant, for many moons. And then my daughter and I were traveling, and I ended up actually, I couldn't walk. And I ended up in a hospital in Spain.
Oh la la.
Yeah, it was really crazy. And I'm a traveler. I know you're a traveler. I love to travel. But I barely speak. Spanish is not my native tongue, and I'm a little not great with that. So I ended up there, and they tried to figure out what was wrong. They couldn't, but they gave me a bunch of injections in my hip so that I could walk again. And we got back to the States, and that really is what started my journey to figure out what was wrong. So after I guess, 50 visits to about 15 doctors. I had 7 MRIs, EKGs, EEGs. I had colonoscopy, endoscopy, small bowel series, you name it. I had the tests. I had scurvy. I had all sorts of, all of my MRIs showed inflammation. I had all sorts of issues. And, after figuring, it took them about 3 or 4 months to figure out what was wrong. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, a leaky gut, and basically systemic inflammation. I had a tear in my glute, a sprain in my ankle from all the inflammation, and it was not a great situation. Okay, so the doctors wanted to put me on some heavy duty biologics. You know this,
Always,
right?
always.
And I don't blame them at all, because in medical school, as you know, I mean, they're trained to help with medicine, and this is a crazy statistic, Angel. I don't know if you know this, but less than 25% of medical schools offer even one course in nutrition, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, so I didn't know the percentage, but I have heard that in general, they have one course. That's what I heard some expert or somebody saying.
Yeah. So you can imagine there's not a lot. And again, I was lucky because I had an angel of a doctor who didn't know she didn't know nutrition, but she stuck with me when I basically started to do a ton of research. And I said, look, I want to find out what's wrong with me and the root cause of it, as opposed to just putting medication on a symptom. Right?
Yeah,
Right.
totally.
Yeah. So
Well, I can definitely, no, 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 I think your story is so powerful because so many of us are like caught up in what we call, the rat race. We're on the treadmill. I personally used to consume loads of sugar as well, processed sugar. And like you say, you just cover up your stress with eating. And I know I've done that, a lot. And so I think your story is super powerful because it can really just help so many people who are struggling with what you used to struggle with.
yeah, thank you for saying that. I think, I can tell you, I'll kind of hit the punchline here, which is I'm grateful that I got sick, because it forced me to really take a lot of time to be introspective and to make a lot of changes in my life. And so, I will tell you that the question you asked was, why did I become whole food plant-based? When I started to do research on how I might heal naturally, and you would have thought I would have known about diet. My first husband passed away of complications of Crohn's. But, all the doctors would say, no, don't worry about it. But it's like your gut. So how could it not impact you? So I actually landed first on Dr. Michael Greger's book.
Oh, yeah.
I love his book. And
He's so awesome.
he's a gem. I actually had dinner with him, like at this group dinner one night. And he's just
Oh,
a really nice man.
yeah.
So I found his book, and then from there, Angel, I started reading voraciously. I thousands of hours in books, and I'm in taking a lot of courses and stuff. But I basically started by I eliminated gluten because some doctor was the only thing they gave me as an option. I don't think that has anything to do with it, because so few people actually respond to gluten in a negative way, unless you have celiac or something. But
Yeah, that's what I heard.
I gave up alcohol, which was a big deal for me because I probably drank too much at the time.
Well,
And
it's stress too. It's so stressful.
yeah, I gave up sugar, and I gave up all meat products. And effectively, in January of 2018, so a little more, like almost 2 years ago fully, I became totally whole food plant-based. And I started to begin to, the brain fog went away, my cholesterol became great, aches and pains. I was able to begin walking. I could start to, I couldn't hold a pen or a pencil. I couldn't sit. I couldn't really do much of anything.
Inflammation.
The inflammation was so bad. And so, that's really what started me on my whole food plant-based journey. And it was really, for me, I look back and it was a lifesaver. I did many other things, which we can talk about later, but I think it made all the difference in the world. And it's actually a lifestyle. I don't think about I eat what I want to eat, and I'm really satisfied, and I feel much better.
Yeah, and I think, again, your story just can help so many people because you can genuinely say, I was where you were, or I was where you are right now. And, here's how I can help you to overcome, basically the standard diet and lifestyle.
Yep, you're absolutely right, Angel. And I think that, when it's really interesting, and I'm sure you've seen this too, and you've probably talked to people about this on some of your lives, but when people, all of a sudden, people like, I didn't try to lose weight, but I lost like 18 pounds, and I wasn't a big person to begin with. And, my skin got better, and, I became like my old self again. And people were like, then everybody wanted to know, so what are you doing? Like, wait, you're doing what? And my house was always the house where people came over. So I would have 10 to 20 people over every Friday night. And I would do a massive dinner with like 10, maybe like 8 to 12 dishes. That's what I love to do for entertaining.
Oh my goodness.
And when I switched my diet, everybody was like, And so it almost became like an interesting, like, how do we get over to see what she's cooking, And it was, so it really, was kind of a nice transition. And it actually became almost like a novelty kind of, like, oh, what is she doing? Because vegan is different than whole food plant-based, as you know. I had tried veganism 5 years ago, and I basically was eating Oreos and potato chips. And I was like, yeah, that's
I
not
start. I started off on junk food, so I.
I'm a vegan. I'm eating Twizzlers, Oreos, and chips, and I'm like, no, all good. And no, it's not the same.
Well, I was a vegan who was eating French fries, cookies, pastries, donuts. Loads of bread.
Totally, totally. And now I'm truly like, I am. I don't even. Again, I don't think about it. I eat real whole grains. I eat real food, and But yeah, I will tell you, for me, I look back, my husband and I, out in Wyoming, and effectively, 2 years ago, this summer, he and I hiked a 17-mile mountain up 5,500 vertical feet. It's the larger mountain passes out here. And I couldn't walk 2 years ago. So, yeah.
No, 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 no. You're living proof that the body can heal, and that takes us to our next point, because in your profile you talk about basically healing through lifestyle and food. So, is there anything else you want to say to us on that topic?
100%. I feel so passionately about this, and I talk to people about it all the time, Angel. So we all make choices every day, right? We make choices about so many things, but all of these small choices add up, right? And none of us really think about these small choices until some event happens. Either you're so miserable in your job, or, you start having chronic pain, or you're gaining a lot of weight, or something gives, right? And, again, I look back, and I had, arguably from the outside, everything was going for me. I had a 7-figure job, income job. I was like, but I wasn't taking care of myself. My little choices were not adding up to anything that was making me healthy. And so I just want to say, I think, like, to be very, very clear, I think lifestyle choices one by one absolutely impact your health. I go back to, I'm really, I don't know if you've ever read Dean and his Ayesha Shazai's book. It's called The Alzheimer's Solution.
No.
It's a really, really terrific book. But effectively, they will tell you that 90% of even Alzheimer's cases can be avoided through lifestyle. And there's so much research that's coming out and that's available. But again, I see my parents, I saw my husband, and, when I think about lifestyle, I know that change by itself can be really hard, right? It just is.
Totally. We're creatures of habit.
Yeah, and like doing something different, it's like, but well, that worked for me. It's like, but it might not be working for you anymore. Someone just joins. Hi.
Hi there. Thanks so much for joining. If you do have questions for Hillary, if you would just put them down in the comment section below, and she'll be happy to answer.
So yeah, I will tell you that nobody wants to believe that lifestyle changes can help, because it means they have to do something, right? If you're given a pill, you don't think, oh, I'll just take the pill. But, lifestyle and there's a lot of different pieces of lifestyle, right? But again, change is, no pain, no gain. Change in and of itself for many people can be painful, right?
Totally.
So
Totally.
my pain was so bad at the time I got sick. I couldn't live my life like that. I knew that I wouldn't have a good quality of life if I didn't make changes. So I was willing to change whatever it took. But my hope for people that I work with and that I talk with is that don't let it get to that point, right? Think about and introspect about what's going on in your life. What's causing you happiness? What's causing you pain? We all intuitively know these things, right? We just need to pause and ask ourselves these questions. And so, I think that I break it down into the following in terms of lifestyle, Angel. I kind of think about these factors. What are you putting in your mouth? How are you living your life? How are you managing your stress? How are you moving your body? And what are you surrounding yourself with? Right? Those are the things that I think about. And each of those has a bunch of factors. So, what are you putting in your mouth? I was putting in too much sugar and too much alcohol and too much processed foods, right? Made changes there. How was I living my life? Was I was working probably 15, 16 hours a day, sometimes 6, 7 days a week. Luckily, I had great friends, but I was living right in the middle of the city. So, the frenetic environment combined with my job, et cetera, was a little bit crazy. I had given up on my meditation because I used to do transcendental meditation. So I brought that back into my life. But, stress management can be anything spiritually. It can be meditation, it could be yoga, it could be your church, it could be your temple, it could be whatever that is for you. It could be exercise. How we move our bodies, Angel, is so critical, you know.
Totally. And I was just going to say, it could be a walk in the park. It could be, going to a lake or a river and watching the birds, or, walking through the park and watching the squirrels. I mean, there could be so many aspects.
100%. And, it's different for everybody. And then, it's about what you surround yourself with. So I removed a lot of toxins from my home. I didn't think about it. I just assume, in the United States, there's very little regulation around supplements. There's very little regulation around ingredients that are put in products, chemicals, and so on. And, in Europe, those regulations are much more stringent. So you'll find,
Totally.
yeah, there's products that you're not allowed to buy in Europe that we're buying here. It's crazy, right? The same goes for GMOs and things like that. But, I think about that. And so I went through all of my products. I went through our detergents. I went through, turns out we had higher radon levels than I thought. Like, there's all these different things. I can't tell you that any one of them
No.
was a silver bullet, Angel, because I don't think that's the case, right? I think, you know,
I think it's just so awesome that you just took a holistic approach, and it's like a wheel, and there are different spokes in the wheel, and or like, a color palette, like, different color palettes or different avenues, to all get to the same destination. So I really, applaud you for, diving deep and really, looking at all of the aspects, relationships as well, probably, sleep as well, whatever it might be.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think all of those things matter. And again, I think everyone thinks about the paradigm and the model for healing a little bit differently. I mean, I studied at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and Health. And so, they teach you about the 12, cogs on the wheel, as you mentioned, which is really powerful. In certain ones impact different people differently. We're all totally individual. So what impacts me might not impact you. Our constitutions might be different. So it's all about kind of just being willing to take stock of what you've got going on, how you're feeling, and making those decisions as to what, can be tweaked to help you either feel better or prevent something from happening in your life. So, I just believe we all have the power in ourselves to stay healthy. I don't think there's a silver bullet. I think food and veganism or a whole food plant-based lifestyle, without question, is a critical, critical component. You know, I'm sure you, like my cholesterol, I have 126 is my cholesterol, right?
That's so awesome.
There's so much that we can do. So
Yeah, I
have
agree.
to do it.
No, I agree. And the other thing I want to say too that you mentioned, for example, currently a person could have wonderful relationships, but their sleep is all over the place, or they're not getting enough exercise or fresh air or sunshine or something like that, right? Or, their diet is a little bit wobbly, or something like that. So, at different points in a person's life journey, they're going to struggle probably with certain aspects or certain, spokes in the wheel, or as we're, kind of using that as an
No, I
example.
do. Totally agree with you. I'm sure, and it's different, right? It's different at different points in our lives. right?
Totally, totally. Let's go through our topics here since we have so much more to cover. And so, can you tell us a bit, please, about your recipe inspiration? What inspires you in your recipes?
Absolutely. So I have always loved cooking. I mean, I wake up, I love food so very much, Angel. Like I wake, you too?
I'm a foodie. I tell everybody I'm a foodie.
Well, I see the pictures you post and they're amazing. I mean, they're incredible. Some of the pictures. I mean, I literally, my family's like, enough already. Like all you do is think about food. I mean, and it's true. I think about food constantly.
Me too. I think about it a lot. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I thought about it a lot, you know, when I was not whole food plant-based, but I even think about it now more because I enjoy it so much. And I'm always thinking, oh, what can I eat next? And I want to experiment. Or, oh, I market and I saw this thing I've never seen before. I'm definitely going to buy that, you know, and I'm going to try doing something with that. So I think about it all the time. And I used to bake for people all the time, Angel, in high school. Even when I was on Wall Street, I would always be the one bringing in a bucket of brownies or some new recipe for some cookies I made or something. And I thought like that was how I was expressing kind of my endearment and my,
Yeah.
warmth for people and creating that family connection because I associated that. Kind of when I think back, really what I was doing was not particularly loving. It was kind of like poisoning people.
Yeah, but you didn't know any better. That's how we're raised. We're raised to, depend on animals for our, nutrients.
It's crazy, but really I was not caring for people the way that I, thought I was caring for them. And so effectively when I went whole food plant-based, I was like, oh, I'm going to try all these really interesting things. And for me, I am incredibly focused on the quality of ingredients I use. So I really try only to use organic when I can. I've been doing a ton of studying over the last year and a half about GMOs and just and pesticide use and and conventional farming, et cetera. So for me, that doesn't work. I know it may not impact everyone the same way, but I try to use only organic ingredients. When I cook or bake in particular, I think about the diversity of plants that I use. I mean, they say the single biggest predictor of a healthy gut is the diversity of plants. And that would be a quote from Dr. B, who's actually a wonderful book called Fiber Fueled. If you haven't read
Yes, I am a bit addicted to Instagram lives, and so I am frequently in the audience of Dr. B, because he's doing like kind of like a world tour, I guess, on
it,
interviews, and so I really get a lot out of his expertise.
he's amazing. I mean, I took his course. It's a certificate program it's called the Plant Fed Gut. It's a great course, Angel. I really enjoyed it. And I took his course, which was, it was a holiday course, but it was terrific. And I mean, he's a gem. But anyway, I try very hard in my recipes. You'll always notice that if I'm baking, I have at least 3 grains. I'll use like oat, sorghum, buckwheat, you name it. I don't use wheat just because I'm gluten-free, but I always use a diversity of plants. I don't use coconut products for a host of reasons. And I'm obsessed with dates.
Yeah. I was just talking about this and I was saying, if you don't like, for example, I grew up with a sweet tooth, and so up until last year, honestly, I avoided the different flavors like sours, bitters, savories, and now, to kind of mask sometimes some of those, more, shall we say, less I don't know, less palatable, flavors or whatever. Would sometimes like put something a little bit sweet in there. It could be dates or it could be an apple or something like that, right? A sweeter fruit. And then, I still get those other nutrients that I'm just not so, super duper, excited about. But definitely, I love the variety you're going for.
I love it. And so I will use all sorts of things. But like if I'm going to use any kind of sugar, it'll be date sugar because date sugar actually retains the fiber. So it doesn't have the same impact on your glycemic index. So it's nice. It's really nice. So I do use that. But so yeah, so effectively I get my inspiration. You know, I'm looking constantly at pictures of food, or like I was in a yoga class outside of yoga, and it came to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to make an apple cinnamon muffin, but I need to use these three ingredients because I've never done, and it just comes, and then I jump in the house and I get going, you know, and you know, I'm a big believer in you taste as you go, right? Because you don't know unless you taste.
No, no. And also because, like we're talking about like the flavor combinations.
Yes, exactly.
So that's gonna kind of, change the, I guess we could call it the profile of the actual recipe that you're using.
Absolutely. And you got to play with it, right? And I always say to people, like, you know, with cooking and baking, there's people say, oh, it's a science, whatever. But, you know, the truth is, it's so individual. What I like, you might not like, you know.
Totally,
So
totally.
something that looks nice, but you make it and you're like, oh, that's not for me. But then you could still fix it up, right? You can add this and add that, and you end up with this amazing dish. And, you know, it's because you can't be afraid to experiment, right? And just throw in, you know, things that would be nice for you. And then usually you end up with something that's terrific. And then you have to remake it a couple times and make sure it works. Yeah. But that's
Yeah.
where this comes from. If I see something that I've never had, or I'll say to my husband, you know, what would you like to try? What ethnicity would you like to go for in terms of dinner tonight? And he might say blah, like he could say, I don't know. He did that the other day. He goes, I'd love something Indian. I was like, okay, we haven't had that in a while. And then
Yeah.
let's give it a try and see what we end up with.
Amazing. And you know what I love about that too, besides all of the diversity of nutrition and nutrients you're getting, but you don't get bored.
Right, right. It's something always new. And it's, again, super good for your gut, which in my case is critical. And because you know, I'm feeding all of the microbiota with all the good stuff. And, you know, it's great.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. So while we wait for others to pop in here, let's go to where can people find your recipes?
So right now, my recipes are just on my Instagram. Eventually, I'll probably build a website out, but that hasn't been my priority. And I also do sell some of my products locally here in Wyoming at the Teton Slow Food Market, which is an online marketplace. And
Wow.
that's a newer thing for me, and that's really fun. I love that, it's just so nice. And people seem really excited about eating real food, you know?
Totally. And I mean, I've noticed this year with this whole global pandemic thing, people have been eating at home more, cooking more. I personally have also been doing that. And I was in a kitchen supply store a while back here since this whole lockdown thing. And I heard the salesperson telling a customer that they were so super busy because people are cooking more. So they were, just their sales were just like really strong, despite everything that's going on.
Totally. People, I mean, and also, I mean, there's just so much out there that would suggest that when you cook for yourself at home, you're generally healthier and you're eating better because you can watch. I mean, at the restaurants, they don't care. They're going to do this with the olive oil. You think it may taste better, right? But like it all it does is adds a lot of fat and a lot of calories. It's not giving you any nutrition. So, you know, there's a big difference there.
Totally, totally. I want to say hi to everyone on the line and thanks for joining. And if you have questions or comments for Hillary, you can just pop them down below and she'll be happy to answer.
For sure.
And meanwhile, while we wait for questions, tell us please a bit, Hillary, about your coaching.
Okay. So I took the coursework for nutrition and health coaching for myself, really, because I needed to heal and get better. And for me, that was so important. Was I really wanted, as we talked about earlier, a holistic approach to healing myself, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to live my life that way. And so I do work with about 4 or 5 people at a given time, but I am not actively marketing coaching services. I really end up through word of mouth, or if someone will ping me, or I see a lot of people in their 30s and their 40s who are starting to not feel particularly good. Yeah, it's creeping up on them. They're either really achy. They'll say, "Oh, I have so many aches and pains," or they're getting some type of tingling, or their gut starting to bother them. They're getting constipation, and so I don't want to see people in pain because I know what it's like and I know it's avoidable with lifestyle, right? I've seen that happen. And I've done it myself. And so I will take on people who I think are really committed and really want the help. Um, and yeah, but it's not, I mean, I do it as a labor of love, meaning I just don't want to see people uncomfortable. I don't do it as a source of income, in the sense that for me, the driver is just, I want people to feel good. I want information out there so that people aren't uncomfortable anymore.
Well, it's so interesting you say that because, and I want to say hi to everybody who just joined and thanks for joining. And please put your questions and comments down below. We're talking about coaching. I see a coach on here who might want to remain anonymous. I don't know. But the point you made, and I've seen another coach make this point too, please contact me if you're serious.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, for me, and I'm sure for any other coach that's on the line, I take things so personally and I so badly don't want people to be sick, but it is so hard. I mean, look, if you would have said to me 2 or 3 years ago, if you stop eating sugar, it'll prevent you from getting sick, I would have been like, no, it won't. Like, I don't buy that. Like, show me the data because I'm a data person, but I never looked for the data myself, right? Uh, I just was like, plowing it back. And so I do think now you can really tell when somebody says, I can't live like this, or I really am committed and I'll make changes. And again, when you start to talk to people, you kind of know. And when you ask them about their lifestyle, you ask them about what they're trying to heal, you get a pretty good sense early on if people are committed. And it is hard though, right? As we talked about earlier, one of the hardest things to do is change, right? Is to make it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I definitely really want to try to focus on folks who are totally committed. And at that point, honestly, for me, it's not about the money. It's about seeing them feel better, particularly if there's somebody I know directly or indirectly. I just, it breaks my heart when you see it so avoidable. You don't have to feel that way.
Right. And I think, if they know their why, if they know why, they really want your help as a coach. And also I think this probably happened to you when you were explaining your journey earlier, that a lot of times, we get to the point where the discomfort is so great that we feel like we just have to make a change. Yeah, we're stuck in our old ways. We're creatures of habit, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, if there's something that is just so uncomfortable about our current habits and lifestyle, I think a lot of times that's the push to make a change.
Angel, I totally agree. And I will also say this. One of the things, so as I mentioned earlier, my first husband passed away from complications of Crohn's. He had Crohn's for,
Bless his soul.
bless his soul. And
Oof.
not really willing to make any lifestyle changes. He was 10 years older than I was. So he was, he passed away. I was 40, he was 50. Our kids were 6 and 7. And in his mind, it was like, no, I'm just going to, be gritted and I'm going to just plow forward. But when we would talk about food or stress, it was like, no. But no doubt that his whole system was off because of those factors. And so what I will say is that myself and watching my husband be sick is it's not only just about you, it's about people around you. So when I think about people who are ill, I know that the pain is not pain just for them, but even if you're feeling ill, at that point you really are focused on, I want to feel better. But it also has such a massive impact on people that are living with you. So we had 2 young children, right? When I was sick, my kids were a bit older. I got sick 2 years ago. My kids were like 15 and 16 or 16 and 17. And I knew that them having to see mom not be able to get out of bed, not be able to do the things she used to do. This was a woman who would get up at 5, make everybody food, go to work, come home, make dinner, put them to bed, talk to them, go work again. I couldn't do anything. I was like basically laid up in bed and not particularly happy. And so, it impacts how one feels, impacts more than just yourself. And so you really have to think about that ecosystem in which you live, right? The people that are around you. Um,
No, I really applaud you for, first of all, being so honest and transparent. And secondly, because I'm bringing up this point because a lot of times I have heard people say, I want to be around for my family.
yeah.
I want to be able to, have that quality of life. And I think that's really what you're getting at. But also, you take away the ego as well. And you say, well, yeah, this is just all about me. But what you're really, illustrating to us is no, it's not all about us. And I kind of equate, I talk a lot about energy, and I know you practice those types of practices as well. And for me, it's like, if my vibration is high, if my energy is high, I'm going to emanate that. I'm going to, communicate that to everyone else around me. So I can definitely, again, I applaud you for bringing this up, because it's super powerful. And like you say, it's not just about us, it's about everyone we're in contact with.
Yeah, and I just feel like, having been on both sides of the illness. So my husband, as I mentioned, my first husband was very ill, and it took a toll on all of us because we just saw him uncomfortable. It makes you feel so sad. You want to help, but you can only help so much. As we talked about earlier, at some point you have to be willing and wanting to help yourself. But it impacts the energy of the household, and it certainly isn't anyone's fault when they're sick, right? And sometimes you learn what causes that illness, sometimes you don't, sometimes you're born with it, but it really does impact your whole ecosystem. And I just, as somebody who has cared for a sick partner, spouse, and also my son was diagnosed when he was 8 weeks old. He had blood in his stool, so he was sick as a kid. And so, you're always worried about those people. So I was the last person I wanted to get sick, because I felt like I needed to be a source of strength for my family, that remained. And so, again, I just always think to people, I never really, you don't really ever want to guilt somebody into getting
No,
better. They need to do it for themselves. But I think it's important that people do recognize that in doing it for themselves, it creates a very different expression of energy around them with other people that they're living with or that they're, encountering. And so, again, you really have to decide to make these changes for yourself. But I think it would be, at least in my case, it was quite obvious that, when someone in the house is ill and not feeling their best, it impacts everybody in the household.
totally. I mean, I kind of think of it as a ripple effect. It's a domino effect. But not only that, I mean, we are a part of a community. For some people, the community is immediate family, extended family, friends, colleagues, you name it, right? So we're not like islands upon our, in and of ourselves. And so, again, everything, and I think like some people get to the point too where they're not even doing it for themselves anymore. They're doing it for someone else.
Yeah, and those things generally don't last if you're doing it for somebody else. If you're not really doing things for oneself, it's hard for them to continue on an ongoing basis. But being aware of the fact that, I think, again, if you're doing it for yourself, it does impact you and therefore the energy around you, and that comes back to you, right? So I think
Totally.
a more, a better energy for the whole community, as you say.
Totally. I want to say hi to everybody on the line, and thanks for joining. And if you have questions or comments for Hillary, please pop them down below and she'll be happy to answer. And meanwhile, we will go to client challenges. So you touched upon this as you were, talking a little bit about your coaching services. But are there any, examples of particular client challenges that you're seeing in your coaching services?
Well, I think that, I mean, there's the issues that people are just like struggling with. And as I've mentioned, I mean, it's actually quite interesting. I end up helping a lot of folks who are younger, who are newly diagnosed with some type of IBD or IBS, because I have so much experience, with 3 of our family members. And, my first husband was on the board of the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, and we do a lot of work with them. So I have a lot of experience in that area. And I also have noticed, again, as we talked about earlier, when people tend to hit their mid-30s or 40s, and it all creeped up on them, and they're feeling that achiness, and they're feeling, a lot of people come in, like I mentioned, with achiness or with constipation, something with their stomach. And those things are very connected. If your gut is not working properly, it's generally driven by a handful of things. Most of that is reversible. And it's reversible, again, people, again, I'm such a massive believer in the notion of fiber fueled, a la Dr. B, but just instinctively, if you're not feeding your gut well, right, your gut carries most of your immune system in it. So if your gut is not strong and healthy, it's very difficult for the rest of your body to be healthy and strong, right? So we have to feed ourselves the right things. But so that one of the biggest challenges, Angel, is that most people, I mean, there's an increasing number of us who are whole food and plant-based. And I don't, I'm not so strict where you have to be X or Y. I think the key is adding more plants, and that will crowd out the other stuff, right? But it's really about getting people to make that shift. And, you know, and we can talk about this. I know one of the things that we want to talk about later is this whole notion of advice for people who want to become whole food plant-based, right? I think it's so connected to one of the challenges that a lot of people have is most of it is knowledge that people just don't know. None of us, we don't know what we don't know, right? So we could have, most people think I'm eating such a great clean diet, right? My diet is so good for me. I'm eating, lots of olive oil. I'm eating, fish. I'm eating eggs that are pastured, or, I'm eating, clean grass-fed beef. I'm eating, really good dairy. But a lot of those things can really negatively impact your inflammation in your body and how you feel. So, I think some of it's about education, and then it's about just helping people make that transition, which again, we'll talk about. And it doesn't have to be, you have to go cold turkey, right? It means, and I shouldn't use the word turkey, but.
No, 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 no. A lot of people do that. Don't
Uh,
worry. Don't
but you
worry.
introduce those other things, and then when people start to feel better, a little bit better, like, oh, I don't ache so much, and then it gets easier to help folks, make a larger transition. So I think the biggest challenges people have is the physical ones, of course, but then through the transition, it's about educating people, and then helping them through that transition and letting them feel good about the changes they are making versus those that they're struggling with, because it takes, for some people, it takes longer time unless you're really sick like I was.
Yes, and I think what you're getting at too, what I'm hearing too, is like once a person can see progress, improvements, a reduction in the inflammation, the pain, the bloating, the fog, blah blah blah, right? The stiffness, etc. I think once we can see an improvement or a change, I think that's like in and of itself, it's super encouraging and motivating, and super inspiring to keep going, because we want more of it. We want to feel that. We want to feel more of it.
Want your energy back. I was working with a client who, was in his early 40s, had, type 2 diabetes, and was really struggling. And living in New York City, crazy life, and started to slowly tweak some things, and started to see some changes in his numbers, and 90, what is it? I think it's 92% of type 2 diabetes, as an example, can be reversed through diet, right? So there is so much you can do. And once that started happening, a little energy started coming back to him, a little bit of weight started coming off. It kind of gives you, that excitement and enthusiasm. The key is, can people stick with it, right? And can it become a lifestyle versus just a one-off?
Totally, totally. So, and I really appreciate you giving that example. So let's go to our next topic, which is naysayers, critics, skeptics of the whole food plant-based diet and lifestyle. What do you say to those people?
You know, it's funny. Most people that I've interacted with, when they see what I'm doing, they're kind of like, the only time people are really naysayers is, well, gee, that must be so limiting. And I'm like, actually, it's really not. Or we'll go to a restaurant with people and they'll be like, I never say I have to go to this restaurant or that restaurant. I'll go to any restaurant, and they'll watch what I'm doing, and I'll just say, oh, I'd love to get a side of this, this, and this, and, none of that, and blah, blah, blah. And they see it and they're like, oh, but there are some, and usually it's actually doctors are some of the biggest naysayers, because they're not really educated and they're still trained in the, old school thinking. But usually I don't find, I'm not trying to push anybody, but people just, they see it, but then they see what's happened to me. So very rarely do people really push back and say, oh, I think that's crazy. Or, they may just say, oh, I have to have meat. And I'm like, actually, you really don't have to have meat. One of the biggest concerns I find people have is you can't possibly be getting enough protein, right?
Yes, yes,
Right?
totally,
Even
totally.
vegetarians are still getting more protein than their body needs. We only need, on average, 45 to 50, unless you're a weightlifter, grams of protein.
I was gonna say, like, it's almost like we've been brainwashed into thinking that we're all, bodybuilders and weightlifters, and we're like at the top of our game. No, a lot of us are couch potatoes. I used to be a couch potato. A lot of us are maybe getting 1 hour, 2 hours of physical exercise per day, but we don't need to be, consuming those. We're not lifting, like 500 pounds.
Right, but even those that are, it's so interesting, Angel, because like a can of beans, you could eat like a cup of chickpeas, I think has 17 or 18 grams of protein. For someone my size, I only need about 45 grams of protein a day. I could eat a cup of beans, and what people don't, like these really rich greens, they have so much protein and calcium in them. So, you're asked the question, which is where do you get your calcium? Sure. The answer is I eat real food, and that real food, every plant has fiber, and every plant has, just about every plant, not every plant, but most plants have protein in them.
Yes. And, I'm glad you brought this up and you kind of, really, went deep on this one too, because what we fail to realize or remember is that the animals that are in the standard diet, they are consuming plants.
Yes. I mean,
So they're getting their amino acids from plants. They're getting their proteins from plants. So, and then, so it's like, why consume animals if we can just go straight to the source?
that's exactly right. And I think there's a lot of misnomers about that. And you're absolutely right. I mean, some of the strongest animals in the world, I go to gorillas and like whatever, they're eating plants. And you know what? They're not weak from that. So I think, again, a lot of this is education, Angel. I think so much of it is we've been, as you said, brainwashed by lobbyists and, whether it's the dairy industry or the meat industry or whatever it is. And that's what we've been taught to believe. So I think a lot of it is just education.
Totally. And, you're like a magnet too, because, you're like living proof of what a healthy diet and lifestyle looks like thriving on plants. And I think that it really, attracts people. Again, I use the example of like, the image of a magnet, and they're like, well, what's she doing? I want to look like her. I want to feel like her. So I think they're drawn to you because of that.
That's very nice of you to say. Thank you.
No, no, it's the truth.
That's kind. But I think I just want people to not go through what I went through. And it's interesting. I think, I really so strongly believe that suffering breeds compassion. And I don't regret that I got sick. I don't lament it. I take it as like a gift that I got sick because I know what it feels like. I also, again, as I mentioned, think I'll have a much better rest of my life for having been sick and changed my life. I don't think I would have been able to do a 17-mile, mountain hike had I not gotten sick, right? So the fact that I
Mhm.
got sick, I think made me much stronger for the long haul. So again, I feel pretty lucky for that. And I also know that I kind of view it as a calling. Like I gave up my job, Angel, on financial services. I moved to Wyoming. And you know what? First of all, I don't need so much stuff, frankly, I really don't. I need to feel good and I need to be with my family. And I think it's about just taking stock of what's really important.
And it's quality over quantity as well. And I just want to say hi to everybody on the line. We have a few minutes left here with Hillary. So please put your questions and comments down below and she'll be happy to answer. So we have a few minutes left here, Hillary. So let's go to your advice for newbies, new whole food plant-based people who are curious, who are friendly towards the notion of changing their lifestyle and diet. What are a couple of tips you would give them, please?
I love that question because I'm asked that all the time. And there is, in it, for some people, it just feels like, oh, it's such a big deal. It's like I have to change everything. I think the first thing I always want to know is why people are becoming if they want to choose a different lifestyle. And again, I prefer the term whole food plant-based over vegan because veganism did not make me feel good, but being whole food plant-based without question allowed me to feel so much better. So, I mean, if people often are going whole food plant-based because either they're sick, that's generally who I'm dealing with, or because of the environment, there's such massive environmental impacts, or because they just don't want to see animal cruelty. So if people are, it depends how quickly people are willing and wanting to make the shift, Angel. If someone says, look, I'm fully 2 feet in, I want to do this overnight, let me, help me do that. I have one path. If they're saying, I just need to leg into it, it's another one. So what I generally do is, the key when you're going whole food plant-based, if you want to go all in, is first of all, you need some education about it. So spending a little bit of time helping people understand what does it really mean? Like, what is the difference between being vegan versus whole food plant-based? And for anybody who's on who maybe doesn't know this, being vegan means you're not eating, touching its ethically or otherwise animal-based products. Oreo cookies, they're totally vegan, but
French fries.
they are filled with processed foods that are super unhealthy for you. I know because I used to eat them. That was the mainstay of my diet. But eating whole food based is really eating that. It's eating whole foods that are made out of plants. So it's whole grains, it's vegetables, it's fruits, it's legumes, it's nuts and seeds. And so they're quite different. And I also would really recommend, I mean, sugar is vegan, but sugar is really not particularly good for your gut, nor is it good for your overall body. And
that processed sugar.
Yeah, processed sugars. Whole sugars, meaning, all sorts of fruits, totally go for it, right? You're getting the fiber with the sweet. But I always say to people, first thing is to do is you have to rethink about how you're going to the grocery store and what you're doing at the grocery store. We need to go through your pantry and look at what you've got in it so that I can explain what does and doesn't work. If you don't know if you're buying packaged foods because you need some convenience products, like Go Raw is a great example of a company that provides great snack foods if you're whole food plant-based, because they have 2 to 3 ingredients. You know what they are. It's dates and maybe there's cinnamon in it.
Yeah.
What things are, right? So
yeah, I love that.
You know what they are. If you're picking up the Oreos, I'm guessing that you don't know what 80% of those ingredients are. Probably not.
Artificial flavors, preservatives, junk.
Absolutely. So, you're going to want to take a look at, so one thing is to learn how to look at labels and stuff if you're going to the grocery store. Again, I always say to people, look at that little sugar line. There's sugar and there's added sugar. You don't want, if it's from plants, if it's sweetened with apples or dates, God bless you, like go for it. That's really good for you. Again, it retains the fiber. But if you're basically, eating a bunch of processed sugar, not going to be great for you. So we have to learn how to clean out the pantry and the fridge. And you have to be willing, people. You must be willing to actually get rid of those products. And then the other thing is to just learn how to think about that grocery store, right? It's the outside of the grocery store versus the inside. Packaged foods versus real foods. And then the last thing is thinking about how to batch cook. Because when people become whole food plant-based, you absolutely can order in. Restaurants are very willing. So people like to, again, change is hard. So people say, oh, I can't do it. I don't have time. You actually can do it, and you actually will have the time. You just have to think about it a little differently. So I do batch cooking. So when you're making a pot of whatever, it could be a tofu scramble, it could be smoky corn chowder, double, triple the recipe. Put some in the freezer. Take it out when when you're ready to eat it. It'll give you diversity. You'll have it ready. It doesn't take much more time to double or triple something than it does to single up on it. And when you're ordering from a restaurant, don't be, a lot of people feel like embarrassed or nervous. Ask a restaurant and they'll say, oh, I can't go there because, thank you, Wellness with Ryan, for sharing that about sugar. You're absolutely right. A lot of sugar is not vegan. I am talking about refined sugars that are vegan. Those are no better for you, frankly. They don't have the animal product, but they're not good for you whether they are truly vegan or not. But thank you so much for clarifying. You're absolutely correct.
Yes, thanks, Wellness is Ryan. No, and a lot of people, I'm going to read this out loud for those watching the replay, because Wellness with Ryan says a lot of sugar isn't vegan. They filter it with bone char, And a lot of people, including myself, didn't know that. And so, facts. Yeah. I mean, but again, before I started all this, vegan journey research and everything, like it's just a lot of us just don't know it. And see, we have my V Spot saying, I had no idea about the bone chart. You see? Yeah. Well, thanks there, my V Spot. Yeah.
So you do need to look, but again, the whole notion of processed sugar, again, that was a bit of a tangent, but I think a really important
Yeah.
sharing that. So I do think that it's important to find recipes that work for you. If you're a cook and you want to cook, great. There's great sites out there, whether it's Instagram or others. There's great cookbooks on it. You just have to, go find the ones that work for you. If you don't have a lot of time and you're super busy, say batch cook. Do it on a day where Saturday, Sunday, when you have a couple hours and you can do a couple big batches, pop them in your freezer. I have, I don't know, a whole shelf of different soups that I freeze. And then again, I would say allow yourself the comfort and confidence of going to a restaurant or ordering something from a restaurant. If you like to not, to order in, because many people I know like to order in. I don't love it because I like my food better, but a lot of people order in. Have the confidence and courage to say, hey, look, I would love some help. There's a lot of things on your menu that look really terrific. I don't eat animals. And I prefer not to have a lot of oil. Can you put together something for me? I see you've got 4 sides, with your mains. I'd love to actually have those 4 sides combined into one, plate and have that delivered. Would you be willing to do that? I have to tell you, I've been doing this for 2 years. I have never had a restaurant say no to me,
I
ever.
agree. I agree with you.
And actually,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, even if you're at the restaurant, the people that you're with, it actually becomes an interesting discussion because they're like, well, why are you doing that? And like, what? So it's an opportunity to educate as well. And, you're not doing anything wrong. You're paying for the food. I see my spot said I tried Swerve, but the feedback I got wasn't good. I would love to talk about Swerve for a second. Is it okay?
Yeah, we have a few minutes left.
Okay, so okay.
No, tell me.
I was just going to say Swerve is an interesting product because it's made with erythritol. There's a bunch of sweeteners that are considered natural, and then there's others that are man-made, and there's artificial. The artificial sweeteners as a class, really bad for you. There's a couple of sweeteners, erythritol being one of them, stevia being a second, where they're either considered neutral to health or somewhat positive to health. And then you've got things like fruits that are clearly positive because you're retaining the fiber, unless you're juicing it and the juice doesn't have the fiber, it's just sugar. But anyway, but yeah, Swerve is an interesting product. Some people like it, some people don't.
Yeah. Okay, we have a couple minutes left. So I appreciate all those tips. I really do. And I think they're helpful for everybody. Tell us please, what's the best way for people to contact you?
Sure. You can go to my Instagram at let.nature.nurture and send me a DM. I am happy to help with anything that you might need help with, answer questions. For me, it's just all about trying to do whatever I can so people don't get sick like I did. And if they are sick, I can help them feel better. Again, I don't do this from a commercial perspective. I actually retired from my job earlier this year, like I said, to Angel and Financial Services. And it's just really all about trying to share knowledge so people can feel better and live their best lives.
Totally. So I do want to thank you so much, Hillary, for taking the time to come on. And everybody's busy, and also to everybody on the chat here. But I want you to please, Hillary, close this up for us, wrap this up with a bow for us, and give us your final thoughts, and or any future projects that you have.
Your health is in your hands. You have a right to feel good, and do not allow yourself to believe that genetics are the only thing that drive your health. It's just not true. And as it relates to food, my strong belief is let's pay the farmers to stay healthy and not the doctors and the pharmaceutical companies to give us medication. I think it's just 2 options we have. I think we all have health at our disposal. And I think we have to just be willing to make changes in order to get there. And those, change is good, right? Change is good over the long haul.
Well, I just want to thank you so much, Hillary, for ending on that high note, for all of your, transparency and honesty. I want to thank everybody else who joined, all your questions and comments. I'm going to save it now, Hillary. and I'll message you afterwards. I just want to be sure I get it saved.
Angel, thank you for what you're doing for the community, and thank you for having me. And I think it's really inspirational when you allow folks to share their stories. It's terrific. Thank you.
Totally. Well, thank you so much again, Hillary, and everybody else. And take good care, everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.